Bodog poll question today. Have 2 wins restored your confidence in the Canucks? Yes, no, or wasn't ever confident? You can vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter. Bodog, your source of free casino games, poker strategies, and sports odds. And the Bodog line of the day from me. I mentioned this last week. The NHL division winner futures odds. They're still there from the offseason. At some point, Bodog's going to account for the yearly returns here and adjust. But right now, if you like the Devils in the Metropolitan Division, where they're tied with the Rangers with a game in hand coming into Vancouver tomorrow after bludgeoning Columbus last night, you can get them plus 500 to win the Metro on your Bodog line of the day. Well, one half of the rink wide doing, our Canucks reporter. I know he was keeping an eye on that Jersey Columbus game last night. It's Mr. Jeff Paterson back with Sekeres and Price. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm good. I don't spend a lot of time watching and analyzing the New Jersey Devils, but maybe I should. 53 shots on goal against Columbus, and they lead the NHL in shots per game, but they're also the stingiest team in the National Hockey League in the fewest shots given up per game. So this will be a challenge. They play a fast game, and we know that can be an issue for the Vancouver Canucks. So Canucks basking in the glory of 2 straight victories, but they've got a pretty good challenge in front of them tomorrow with the New Jersey Devils in town.
Yeah, quite right on the shots count there. Why don't we then go to the Bodog poll question, Jeff? Have 2 wins restored your confidence in this team?
I'm not going to say that they're back just with 2 wins, but I will say that 2-5-2 is a whole lot better than 0-5-2. And I don't think they were ever as bad as the 7 straight losses. I think it takes doing some good work to get the leads that they had. That's the big frustration, is even a couple of those games, if they had been able to nurse them across the finish line, maybe they're a 500 team, and 500 at the end of the year is not going to get you where you need to be. But I think what the 2 wins here does is just provides them a base of stability that they can now sort of exhale and hopefully get some traction moving in the right direction. Jersey's not going to be easy, but Anaheim, I know they beat the Leafs. That may be their Stanley Cup, as it turns out. And then Nashville, and at the end of the week, this seems like an opportunity with 3 straight here at home to continue what they built on with the wins over Seattle and Pittsburgh. But to, just give them a flat-out pass and say, yes, full-on confident that this team is, going to go on this incredible run now. Not sure I'm there yet. There are still some questions about the way that they play, and obviously inserting new players here in the coming games. We'll see how they fit in and how they look. But, it was just nice to be in that locker room on Friday night, and you could just feel the temperature had been lowered from, 3 nights earlier after the loss to Carolina. Guys, there were actually some smiles in there. I think they remember what winning feels like.
But there was a cohesiveness and an intensity that we hadn't seen previous to that. And what I lament is that with multiple 2-goal leads in the first 4 games, as we all well know, there was an opportunity there to get 1 or 2 wins at least. Sure. And if you got any semblance of what we saw on the weekend in those games, for even just one of the periods there, one of the third period, they probably get 1 or 2 of those wins rather than giving up those multi-goal leads.
Yeah, and we said every game in October means as much as the games in March and April. They should have known that from last year. They talked a good game prior to the season, and then, go out and do that and just flush the big lead in Washington, obviously the big lead on opening night in Edmonton, to be up on the Flyers. Those were points that were there for the taking. And, that's going to handcuff them as they move forward here. But that's where I say I think there's nothing they can do about that now. You hope that they learned some tough lessons from that and that there is this sort of base now to build on. And credit where it's due. They were really good against Pittsburgh. That was their best performance, start to finish. We've lamented the lack of 60-minute efforts. I thought they had a nice start to the hockey game. They were able to extend their lead. There was a few anxious moments early in the third period, but kind of against the run of the play, they got the Kuzmenko goal, and from there was no looking back. And so Pittsburgh wasn't very good. We saw that they went into Seattle and weren't very good there. They 4 straight losses, but I don't want to take away from what the Canucks did. And a short-staffed Canucks team that had played the night before in Seattle. So, there was every reason to think that they were going to be in tough against a Pittsburgh team that was going to be ready for them. And, guys, it meant a ton, I think, to the Vancouver Canucks in the big picture here to back up the win in Seattle. If they had come home from Seattle and rolled over to Pittsburgh, what are we doing here, right? It would have been 1 win in 9, and what's the point at that? But the fact that they were able to build off the win in Seattle. Again, it wasn't a perfect game, but I do think start to finish, it was their best game of the season, and now they feel like they've got even a modicum of traction now and having a weekend off to kind of rest up and get ready and hopefully get some healthy bodies back in the lineup here for the remainder of this homestand.
Quite right, Jeff. I mean, the Pittsburgh win, certainly you remember what happened in the Pittsburgh game here last year, but also back-to-back, home, away, a team lying in wait, having practiced in your city and all that after coming off 2 losses themselves. It was a very good win. You're quite right that backing up the Seattle Kraken win was paramount for these Canucks. Otherwise, the tenor is completely different through the weekend and into today on all the shows. Elliot Friedman reporting that Jim Rutherford read these players the riot act. I mean, basically told them that if changes is going to come, it's going to be from the current roster, and even talked about waiving players. I'm wondering your take on the GM getting involved in fire extinguishing or maybe setting fires in the dressing room in the early going when the Canucks were struggling.
Yeah, I'm not shocked. Look, they fired a coach last year. I don't think that this ownership in this organization really has the stomach to bring in a third head coach, even if it was just promoting Mike Yeo or Jeremy Collett and whoever already in the organization. But at some point, if you think that another coach is the problem, then you probably have to look elsewhere for the true problems. And look, their best players weren't playing well enough. I think we recognize that. Connor Garland was made a healthy scratch, and you look back at that now and you think, how is that even possible? Because I think he's been really good for them and was again the other night. And yet that was message sending. We heard the coach talk about them being mentally fragile. The players only need, like, there was a lot going on with this group in the first week of the season. And so I'm not surprised that Jim Rutherford, he's been at this a while. I think he has a handle on where the problems lie within a locker room. And we know that in the offseason, there was the quote attributed to him about being a country club. That gave you a pretty good sense that maybe he thought that there were a few too many guys that just weren't giving it their all. And so trying to snap them to attention, and I'm not sure the timing of this, if it was before the Seattle game, if the win over the Kraken was a direct response. I think we all agreed that the Kraken game was far from perfect, but it was enough there. And look, guys, your best players have to lead the way. We know that. All of a sudden, Bo Horvat up to 6 goals. JT Miller with an empty netter the other night. He's at 5. One of the things I liked about the Pittsburgh win, though, was that he didn't rely on Elias Pettersson. Like, he was in there. He made the nice interception of the Danton Heinen. That was a brutal giveaway, by the way, on what turned into the 3-1 goal. But you don't look at the result and say, oh, they only beat Pittsburgh because Elias Pettersson put them on his shoulders. He played, and he played all right, but they spread the offense around. Mikheyev is all of a sudden now starting to leave a bit of a mark on these games. That's a good sign. Kuzmenko up to 3 goals. So, you need your best players. Through it all, though, one of the paths forward that I think we all agreed on was that the component parts are here to have a truly lethal power play. And in these 2 victories, the power play went 4 for 6. So you're not going to score on 2/3 of all of your power plays, but when you're down and seemingly out, that was their ticket back to just getting this thing back on the rails. And so the power play's clicking now. Power play's in the top 10 in the National Hockey League, where I think a lot of people think it probably rightfully ought to be. And with 8 power play goals on the season, they're just 3 off the league lead. So for all the doom and gloom, that power play can be a difference maker, and it certainly has been in these 2 victories here.
And this Hughes fellow should help make sure it stays in the top 10. And all of a sudden, for Tuesday's game, you insert Bear and Hughes into the lineup, both of whom are known to move the puck well. All of a sudden, the offensive attack. We'll see what defensively that looks like. But the offensive attack and helping to outscore any of their defensive problems seems like a more likely scenario here with those 2 guys going in.
Yeah, and just to point out that this power play has been red hot without Quinn Hughes, and obviously he is going to help it, but they're finding a way to get it done in his absence. I thought just a fascinating quote. I don't know if you saw the quote to Ben Kuzma after Sunday's practice, though, where Quinn Hughes caught to the fact that they said he was sick there just before the season, but he said, oh, no, I was playing through, this thing needed treatment. We hoped that it was going to get better. And then you have to wonder about the strategy, long-term, big picture, knowing what he means, and then running him out there 27 and 28 minutes a night in the back-to-backs in Washington and Columbus. And I didn't think he was particularly sharp in the Columbus game. And then they go into Minnesota, and then you have to sit him down. So clearly this has been an ongoing thing, and you hope that it's just the 4 games, and that's going to allow him to get back up to speed here. But certainly this early in the season, definitely something worth monitoring. As for Ethan Bear, I'm curious to see how this works. He's here now. He's had a couple of practices. but he hasn't played a game of any consequence since last season. Remember, one of the storylines there was he was a scratch in the playoffs, got into, I think, 4 preseason games in Carolina, but he hasn't played a regular season game. So I don't know if it's going to be as simple as plugging him right in, or does he have to be patient here and wait his turn, and you make the trade. You'd think you'd want to plug him in immediately, but all of a sudden, with Riley Stillman back at practice and Rathbone, I know they sent Guillaume Brisebois back, and I tweeted it out, but guys, he was really good on Friday night. Like, just credit where it's due. Clearly he's back on the farm now, so he doesn't figure in this team right now moving forward, but if they call him up again, I got just good on him at this stage of his career to get into NHL games, and I thought, he outside of Myers and OEL, he was third on the defense corps in ice time against the Pittsburgh Penguins and matching up against Crosby and Malkin. So I thought he did his part there. But all of a sudden, they've just got this abundance of bodies. The question is, what is their optimal setup on defense? Because Stillman now is back practicing and he looks healthy. He's still got Rathbone here. Kyle Burroughs gives you what he can. Is he the odd man out? Because Shen and Myers, you'd think on the right side, are probably staying in this lineup. So, does Ethan Bear just have to leap over Kyle Burroughs? Is that sort of the baseline here? And I just don't know. I'm not sure right here, right now, but they're coming off back-to-back wins. So is it fair to Kyle Burroughs to take him out of the lineup just to plug in a guy that you acquired but who hasn't played a game this season? And yet fairness often doesn't enter the equation here, especially for teams that pick up a piece like Ethan Bear. So interesting to see there. And then the other one, guys, is Brock Boeser, who's back at practice, but didn't sound like he had a line to call his own. And I do wonder, he wasn't on either of the power play groups that was practicing. So I do wonder if this is just a step, get him back into the group. But he may not be able to play until Thursday at the earliest against Anaheim. But when he comes back, this is a player that they were banking on scoring a bunch of goals, doesn't have a goal this season, has now had to sit out the last 3 games. And the way that their top 6 is set up, you bring in Jack Studnicka, that's fine. I'm all for giving him an opportunity. But do you think Jack Studnicka is going to be the answer for to get Brock Boeser going? Or is Nils Aman? So all of a sudden, when you put JT Miller on the wing, it comes right back to this idea of their strength in the middle isn't maybe what they think it is. But you needed to get JT Miller going, and that line with Horvat and Garland has looked really good the last couple of games. So just kind of curious where Brock Boeser is going to slot into this, and ultimately, what's it going to take to jumpstart him to get his first of what they're all hoping is many goals this season.
Hoping they can jumpstart Podkolzin as well, because Podkolzin's down on the 4th line now. He does have probably Boeser's spot, you'd think, on the second power play unit right now. He's certainly not playing necessarily where Boeser would. Maybe he is as the net front presence there on power play 2. But we know he's got the will and the want, but the results haven't been there. 2 points in the season so far is not enough for Vasili Podkolzin.
It's not, and I've made this point before. Like, I think it's really important. I know he's young. He was a top 10 pick. Like, this idea that this is who he is and should be, he was a top 10 pick. Like, you need more from that. And I'm high on Vasili Podkolzin. I still like the player a lot, but in Seattle the other night, he had 1 shift in the 3rd period in a tight game. Played 7 minutes, was the low ice time man for the Vancouver Canucks, played a little bit more against Pittsburgh, but not an awful lot. And right now he is slotted in as a 4th line guy, and that's with Curtis Lazar out of the lineup. And so, a little bit concerned just because he finished so strong last year. When there were injuries around him, he was elevated and he responded to that. And I thought, man, I hope he can pick up where he left off. That has not been the case. And so you're right. As they approach their 10th game of the season, he's still looking for his first goal this year. Hasn't looked particularly dangerous. And I think when he's been at his best, like a lot of these guys, it's when he had the opportunity to skate with Elias Pettersson for a couple of games, but they've gone away from that. He's dropped lower in the lineup. And I just don't ever want it to get lost in the shuffle. But this guy was a top 10 pick. Like, I think it's okay to have some higher expectations, even though he is just in his 2nd year in the National Hockey League.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Thank you for this. We'll be listening to Rink Wide and look forward to catching up with you on Wednesday, my man.
All right, guys. Thanks.